I'll go first.
All right, sure.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I'll keep.
Keep.
Toffel, come on. That's 8 cards.
Oh.
And here's 5 more ways for you to catch cheaters. Maybe the most intuitive way of cheating to many is to look for a card in your deck and then put it on top. And that has actually happened a bunch in, the history of Magic.
I really need a planes right now.
Why do you wink at me? I'm your opponent.
If I get a planes, I win. Oh, will you look at that?
Well done, Carl. Well done. So yeah, this one is quite easy to spot usually because
They wink. It's the winking.
So to pull this off, you just kind of look at your deck while shuffling, and if you spot a card on the bottom that you're looking for, you would intentionally shuffle it to the top, which will then make you draw it the next turn because, well, then it's on top of the library and you can successfully draw it. Now, how would you prevent this? Toffel, you can just cut Carl's deck.
Very good. My plan is thwarted.
One of the tells that your opponent is doing this is if they continue looking at their deck kind of suspiciously, because it is not allowed to look at your deck while you're shuffling. So if your opponent is shuffling like this, that's not a good sign. Instead, maybe you can ask them to shuffle their cards this way, where it's impossible for them to check the bottom of their deck. Much better.
I feel like a plain tutorial. If you feel somebody is cheating, please go ahead and advise them. And remember, helping yourself before helping others.
This also enables the so-called fetch land lock, where after you crack the fetch land, you present the deck to your opponent, they shuffle another fetch land to the top of your deck, and then you're kind of stuck in this loop forever because presumably you will crack your fetch lands. This kind of cheating is actually so prominent and it would be so easy for many to pull off that at a professional level of play, it's required to cut your opponent's deck because at a competitive level, you don't want any accusations of cheating.
So that actually works really well if you just want one card at the top of your library, but sometimes I have scribed a bunch of lands at the bottom of my deck and I really need to draw non-land to get me there. And there's a few other techniques that I'll demonstrate. So in that very same way, if you want to keep the same card on top, it's easy. You think Tal's shuffling. Really? No, he's cheating.
What?
May I? Say you really wanted this snap.
There's a snap on top.
I'll let Tal keep on shuffling. Do you notice something about the top of his library?
It's never changing.
It's never changing. He's gonna draw a snap no matter what he does. He's been doing it for a while. You've been paying attention. But if he just picks up his deck, does that, hands it to you, or puts it down and then draws a snap, he wins. But sometimes you need more than just one card. Let's say he brainstormed 3 snaps. What if you've got 3 creatures he has to take care of 3 turns in a row? Talif, would you mind doing a fake cut for us? So your opponents can fake cut their cards. If you want the top cards, you're not really rearranging the order of the cards. Natalif, would you like to do that in slow motion?
So you have it like you cut it in 2, and then you move the snap here, and then you grab it again and pop. It's still on top.
All right, and now one fast again, please. Oh, it's so smooth.
It can be much smoother. This is actually very dangerous because if you're really quick, it's impossible to see.
So especially when you travel to different events, different people around the world shuffle their cards in different ways, the same way people have different accents even when they speak the same language. So if you see someone shuffling strange or different from the way you're used to seeing people shuffle, it doesn't mean that they're cheating. They just could be Talf and his beautiful riffle shuffle.
Yeah, or it could be Tarov with
That's not the example of the beautiful riffle shuffle. So if you are unsure of how they're shuffling, don't call them a cheater immediately. The easiest thing to do, just cut their deck. And if you're at an FNM, you're like, oh, I feel kind of bad doing this, you're completely allowed. Friday Night Magic, anywhere. If someone has a problem with you cutting their deck after they shuffle, they're doing something suspicious.
All right, so far we've had 2 versions of library manipulation, right? But what if you just gain a game advantage by drawing multiple cards?
I'll preordain. I'll draw 1.
All right, well, that was actually 2 cards. But it was not that easily tellable, especially if you're not paying attention. One of the common themes of cheating, right? When your attention is somewhere else, it's really easy to cheat against you. But making 2 cards look like 1 is really dangerous because card advantage is a thing, right? Like drawing multiple cards is really powerful. Sometimes people are looking for specific cards. And yeah, it gets even worse when there's multiple cards involved with cards like Brainstorm or say a Mulldrifter. Do you really keep track if your opponent draws 6 or 7 cards in that one sweeping motion? Telling the difference between multiple cards being drawn and a different multiples of cards being drawn is actually quite difficult. I mean, did you catch Toffel drawing 8 cards in the starting hand at the start of this very video? Because without paying attention, it's really difficult to do so.
So what's the best way of preventing this?
Well, you can always ask your opponent for how many cards they have in hand, right? Because that...
Did he draw an extra card?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. But obviously in the early turns of the game, it's very easy to keep track. In the later turns, just pay attention to how many cards they currently have in hand and how they get those cards, right? And then you should be on the safe side of things.
But once again, don't feel afraid to ask. People don't mind. They're even happy to brag about how many cards they have in hand. How many cards do you have in hand?
0.
How much did you mind me asking you how many cards you had in hand?
0.
All right, let's start a game of Magic.
My favorite thing to do.
Yes.
All right, so I go first?
I think I rolled a 7 too.
You sure?
rolled a 6? Pretty sure he's rolled a 6.
I feel like I'm being bullied right now.
I'm sorry. Jamin starts. Jamin, what do you have for breakfast 4.5 weeks ago? You don't know exactly. This is the problem. Some things are very hard to remember, and this could be as easy as, did I play a land this turn? Or what did I roll in the beginning of the match to start? Well, sometimes people forget within seconds, and an innocent question, especially a suggestive one, can go to a lot of weight. Well, what's your best case you can do right now?
Call a judge.
Yeah, that's actually true. And that's the mean part about opportunity cheats, that it kind of hinges on people forgetting and getting allowance for doing something. And the worst part that can happen is that it gets redone. But the best part is he actually starts. So you get an advantage without ever having a negative. Because those are free, they have to be recognized and remembered by somebody. So when a judge comes for the first time and said like, okay, we do it like this, they will actually remember and like on the player, their player notes. And then eventually if that happens 4 or 5 times, people go like, wait a minute, that's really weird that this...
There's no way 4 or 5 players can be wrong.
Yeah. Is it 5 times the same player or this opponent? All right, let's go to a second example and start again. All right, this has been going on forever, and eventually Jaren's going to ask.
I can still play a land, right?
And in this case, Carl, what do you say?
I don't know. Yaman's been tanking for a while. I guess. I don't remember him playing one.
All right, that's a free land for Jamin, which already played a land before. This is actually one of the, well, easiest way to get your opponent's approval of asking a suggestive question instead of like, I think I can still play a land, with it being very sure or confident that you already played a land. The opponent has the chance to either decline, then it's the normal game state, or say, well, I guess, yeah, you can do it, and free land, out of nothing.
I think that's your third land, Yamin. There's a line.
So while playing an extra land kind of comes up on the spot, you can't really plan that out turns ahead. The next one has to be extensively prepared because our next cheat is marked slaves.
I will cast a preordain.
So in this case, Toffel can freely bottom the 2 lands he just scryed because he knows the 3rd card down is also a land. Now, how does he know? Well, this sleeve literally just says Cardmarket on the back.
You didn't notice, huh?
It was calling to me.
Carling?
There are many different ways that sleeves and cards could be marked. For example, a fold in the sleeve itself, or maybe some mark with a little pen. And this can even happen unintentionally while shuffling sleeves, right? Like when you shuffle sleeves a lot, they get worn down. Some cards might stick out. Let's mark a sleeve right now. Let's say you always want to know whether you have this preordain on the board. Well, you can just take the sleeve and fold it over a little. And now, whenever you see this little crease on your sleeve, well, you know, that's a preordain.
Yeah, actually, these don't have a lot of details on them, so it's a lot more noticeable, but like I'm just noticing we have these Dragon Shield Christmas sleeves here. There's tons of places. I could put the eye off on all of my combo pieces on the dragon, and then a few of them could have a dark eyebrow, and then I'd know that those are my draw spells.
And it only gets worse when sleeves get worn down while shuffling, right? Because is this marked, or is this just you shuffling them very roughly? If you're ever suspicious that this kind of thing could be going on right now, as always, please call a judge, because judges can check these things even better than you can. And they're trained to check decks for these kinds of mismatches in sleeves and kind of, cards sticking out. This is also why foils sometimes are actually a disadvantage in tournament play, because they could curl and then they could stick out, counting as a marked card.
Of note, this is one of the more common unintentional cheats to ever happen. So I'd recommend, if you have pet sleeves that you really, really like and that you haven't bought in a long time, I'd recommend either changing them, or if you go to a tournament with them, just show them to a judge before you enter the tournament, because there's a high chance that if you've been shuffling them up forever, for months and months, they might be specks of dirt on them and they actually won't be tournament legal because they would count as marked cards. So if you really like the sleeves, I'd recommend going to show them to a judge.
After talking so much about cheating, you might feel like there's cheats hiding around every corner, but in reality, there really isn't. At FNM, you're probably not getting cheated against. It's of course important to stay vigilant and kind of, check what everyone is doing, but we're not here to spread distrust among the TCG community, just to spread awareness. If you enjoy this kind of content with us three, then please consider subscribing. It helps the channel a ton, or maybe sharing this video with someone you want to get educated. In the meantime, all of us will see you in the next video.